Good morning dear students, welcome to the English class. And in this class of video today we are going to discuss the important lesson which we started in the previous class, that is the secret of work by Swami Vivekananda. And we had discussed some details about life history of the Swami Vivekananda and how Swami Vivekananda was very important. And we discussed some other points which are related to the lesson, that here how can be the miseries in the world be cured. So these are the things we discussed, and even until man's character becomes poor, until there is a light in the man's heart, until you are spiritually and educationally strong, so all miseries will be felt. So in order to put an end to the miseries, here man's character need to change. So this is the thing yesterday we discussed. Now coming to the today's class. In this class today we are going to discuss some other important things which are by the Swami Vivekananda. And all these things are by Swami Vivekananda's preachings. So whatever the Swami Vivekananda used to say, all these points, all these important points comes under our lesson, the secret of work. And today here see, according to the Bhagavad Gita, what Bhagavad Gita says is that we must do work continuously, incessantly. Here incessantly, we must work incessantly. Incessantly in the sense without stoppage. There should not be any stop in the work. The work which you wanted to do it continuously without any gap, without any absent. So here, that is what always Bhagavad Gita preaches. But here there are many kinds of work, and the work in which you do may be good or evil, but you should not think of whether the work you are doing is good or bad. But here every work is be the mixture of both evil and good. But we need to think, we should not think whether the work you are doing is good or wrong. But here what Bhagavad Gita is always trying to say is that we should work continuously. But here another important thing is that do not think of the good or evil. But here Swami Vivekananda is clearly explaining you, clearly saying you that you should work continuously. You should work continuously, but do not think of the work is good or bad. But here every work is a mixture of both good and bad. But here you should not think of whether the work you are doing is good or bad. But here you are forced, you are ordered to work continuously without any gap. And another important thing is that see, for example, if you continuously do some good work, so automatically it affects a good result. Similarly, when you do something bad all the time, when you hear something all the time, automatically you get some sort of bad effects. So if you do something good, you get good effects. If you do something bad, you get some sort of bad effect. But here both good and evil are, see here, good and evil are the bondage of this soul. Here both good and evil are bondage of the soul. But here we should not attach to either good or bad. We should not attach to either good or bad. Right? Okay now. So next. Right. So here. So good and bad are bondage of soul, according to the Swami Vivekananda. But here you should not attach to good or bad. So you should do your work continuously. You should do your work incessantly without any gap. So here, as we already discussed that every work is both mixture of good and evil. But you need to do. You should not think of whether the work you are doing is good or wrong. So both, if you do some good work, you get some sort of good effect. If you do some bad work, you get some sort of bad effect. So every work there must be some effect. If the work is good, you get some good work. If the work is bad, you get some bad effect. And finally here, last point here is that you should not attach to whether good effect or bad. So as we discussed that every work is both good and evil. And both good and evil are the bondage of soul. So they attach, but here we should not attach to either good or bad of bondage, right? So these are the points. So here, according to the Bhagavad Gita, work is very important. We should not think of work, and you should do continuously work without any gap, and do not think of whether the work you are doing is good or wrong, and every work is both mixture of evil and good. So both evil and good are bondage of soul. We should not attach to the either good or bad. And another important thing is that here character of the person is determined by impressions. For example, whatever the mind that thinks, whatever the body that does, whatever the body that does, or whatever the mind that thinks every moment leaves some impressions, behind in subconscious mind. For example, you always think something bad, you always hear something bad, you always do something bad. So these things will leave you some sort of bad impressions. Similarly, when you hear something good, when you do something good, and when you perform some good activities, automatically you get some sort of good impressions. So here today, what we are today is effect of some good or bad impressions. What we are today is determined by some good or bad impressions. For example, if you continuously are doing some good actions, you are hearing always some good things, so automatically you leaves, that means there are some good impressions leaves behind you. So what I am today is determined the sum of total impressions which I have done in the past. So whatever the actions that I have completed in my past will reflect my future, will reflect my present. So what I am today is based on some actions that I have completed in the past. So that is how important it is to work continuously without any gap, according to the Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda here explains that you should work continuously. So if you do something good, you get some sort of good impressions. If you do something bad, you get some sort of bad impressions. So whether you are a good character person, or whether you are a good characterized person or bad characterized person, is determined with some of impressions which you have in the past tense. So in the past you continuously do something bad, hears something bad, and does something bad, definitely it leaves some bad impressions, and these bad impressions will make you a bad character. And similarly, when you do something good, automatically you get some sort of good impressions. Here, another important thing is that man's character is determined by the total sum of impressions, whether the impressions are good or bad. Whether the impressions are good or bad, but because of these impressions, a man's character will be determined. So as Swami Vivekananda said that character has to be established through the hundreds of the stumbles. So your character will not be judged. A character of the particular person will not be judged by taking a single incident as an example. So we need to consider many things. We need to consider many activities of the particular person. Therefore, a man's character is determined. So character has to be established. So that in this lesson, your character has to be established by doing some activities, by performing many activities, whether the activities are good or bad, but you keep on doing some activities, but you should not think of whether the activity is good or bad. And another important thing is that here, see, a man's character is compared to a tortoise. Do you know a man's character is compared to a tortoise? You know, we know tortoise. So it has a shell on its head. So tortoise is very slow and very good animal, a good creature. And you know, here a man's character is compared to a tortoise. How a man's character is compared? For example, if you do continuously good actions, if you hear something good, and if you perform some good activities always, and these good activities, these good hearings, and these good doings will make you a strong impressions in your mind. Even if everybody wanted to do something bad, if anybody wanted to make you to do something bad, you don't do something bad because you are already determined by some of total good impressions. Your mind is determined, your mind is fixed to do some good activities because you always listen something good, you always hear something good, you always perform some good activities, you always do something good, so that your body, your mind, your both mind and soul is determined to do only good things. Even if everybody around you trying to force you to do something bad, but you won't commit any bad activity. In the same way, here, when you see a tortoise, when you touch the tortoise, what does it do? It tucks its head and legs inside the shell, isn't it? So, similarly, even if you try to if you try to break the tortoise into the pieces, but it doesn't open its head out and legs out. So it is strongly determined, whatever the thing that is happened outside, it doesn't open its head and also legs. So that is how, as a tortoise doesn't open its head and legs outside of the shell, even if something is happening, so your character is also determined. Your character is also as same as a tortoise. So even if everybody trying to ask you to do something, if everybody trying to make you or force you to do something bad, but you won't commit any bad activities because you continuously hear something good, you continuously you continuously do something good, and you continuously perform some good activities. That is how a man's character is determined. A man's character is determined. A man's character is determined by the sum of the total impressions you have completed in your past. If the impressions are good, your character is bad. If your impressions are good, your character is good. If impressions are bad, you have some bad impressions from the past, so you are very bad character today, according to the Swami Vivekananda. And let us continue other paragraph, right? Right. Another important thing is that, so everybody works, as Swami Vivekananda says that, and the central theme of Bhagavad Gita is that to work continuously, to work incessantly. But here, how many of you do? How many of you work like a master or like a slave? You know, as Swami Vivekananda is explained us that we should work like a master. We should not work like a slave, because there is no true love possible in slave. So when you do work continuously as a slave, you expect something in return. So when you expect something in return, automatically you will be attached to the work you have completed. Here we should do work without expecting anything in return. So that is how we should work like a master, not like a slave. So when you work like a master, with the freedom there is a liberty, and there is a true love possible in working like a master. See here, work with the freedom. When you work with the freedom, there is a true love possible in liberty. When you do work like a master or like with the freedom, definitely there is a true love possible, and every act of love brings you a happiness. So when you perform, where every act of love brings you happiness, because there is true love possible in liberty. And how a liberty will get, and how a liberty you will get. So when you work with a freedom, there will be a liberty. In liberty, a true love is possible, and every act of love brings you happiness. So that is how we should work like a master, not like a slave. And there is no true love possible in slaves. There is no true love possible in slavery. So that you are instructed to work like a master, not like a slave. And you should not expect anything return the work you completed. So whatever the work you completed, you just complete and forget it. But you should not expect anything return from the work. So that is how Swami Vivekananda is instructed you. And another important, this is, do not expect anything in return. This is very important thing that we already discussed right now. And you work for example, you are writing an examination. Do not think of the result, whether the result are good or bad, but do not be attached to the result. So your duty is to write examination. That's our. Your duty is to write examination, and whatever the result you get, you should be very happy. And when you attach to the result, automatically again it leads to the miseries. So the reasons for all these miseries is to expecting something in return for the work we have completed. So another important thing is that see, if you expect anything, you will be attached. So if you expect anything from the work you have completed, definitely you will be attached to the either good or a bad. So when you attach it to either good or bad, automatically again you feel miseries felt in your life. So you definitely feel some sort of miseries, and again it comes to first. So that here man's character has to be changed. Man's mind must be very pure, and man's must be enlightened spiritually and educationally, and you should get some sort of strength educationally and spiritually. Because of ignorance, so we commit mistakes. Because of these mistakes, these mistakes leads us into the miseries. So that even if every house is changed into the hospital, miseries always be felt, and there will be no cure for the miseries in the world unless man is changed his nature, unless man needs to be purified. Okay, another important thing is that there are two forces here according to the Swami Vivekananda that guide the conduct of the man. A man's character can be conducted. A man's character can be determined. A man's character is very important. So only by two guiding forces. There are two guiding forces according to Swami Vivekananda. These two guiding forces can guide the conduct of the man. Here see, the very first one is might, and second one is mercy. Might and mercy are two guiding forces. You will be asked in the examination, what are the two guiding forces that guide the conduct of the man? So you can write both mighty and mercy. Mighty and mercy are two guiding forces. They guide the conduct of the person. And another important thing is that the act of mighty leads to selfishness. The act of mighty is always leads to selfishness. If it is a selfishness, there will be no freedom, because in selfishness there is no freedom. In slavery there is no freedom. If there is no freedom, there is no true love possible. Okay, so that automatically it leads to attachment of the evil. So it is a bondage of evil. So that when you attach to the bondage of evil or a good, so automatically again you will feel some sort of miseries. So that we should not be attached either good or a bad, and you should not expect anything in return. And the two guiding forces are might and mercy. So here the activity or the actions or the activity of the mighty will always lead to the selfishness. But here on the other hand, mercy is a heavenly thing. So we should treat like work is worship. We should treat like work is worship. That means we should work continuously without any stoppage, without expecting anything in return. Definitely you won't be attached to the any attachment. So when you get a non-attachment, you won't feel any miseries. That is according to the Swami Vivekananda. So these are the very, very important points, and this lesson is also very, very important point, and you need to learn some sort of things from the lesson, and how you should work, and what are the two guiding forces, and how the miseries in the world be cured. And what are the ways, according to the Swami Vivekananda, to put an end to the miseries in the world? So, and what are the impressions? What do we do? And we should work continuously without expecting anything in return. Okay, na? You should not stop work, and you should not be attached with either good or bad. So these are the very important things according to the Swami Vivekananda. Thank you all. Thank you very much.